If you spend any time with kids or teenagers, you're probably aware that anxiety and depression, well, it's having an impact on this generation. And you've probably been exposed to all the things, social media, smartphones, it's everywhere. The bottom line is childhood is changing. So how do we navigate that? Well, here's what we know. We know parenting is complicated. We know it's really complicated in the digital age, and we know you want to get it right, and we really want to help. So we put together this resource to shed some light on what's happening in the mental health world and with our kids and teens today, and what we as a church, educators, and parents can do to help. My name is Holly Goddard, and I'm the executive pastor here at North Point Community Church. But I'm also a mom. I have 3 kids that range from elementary to high school. So this is a really important topic for me at work and at home. And so our goal today is just to share some new research on technology and how it's affecting the mental health of our kids and teens. We're going to offer some practical help for parents, educators, small group leaders, really anybody that loves and spends time with kids. First, we're going to talk to Zach Rausch. He's a lead researcher of a new book entitled The Anxious Generation. Zach will share what his research revealed and then suggest some next steps. And then we're going to chat with Sissy Goff. Sissy is a professional counselor. She's the author of 13 books, and her latest one is called The Worry-Free Parent, Finding the Confidence You Need So Your Kids Can Too. As a church, we consider it such a privilege to come alongside you as you parent your kids. And providing you with resources like this one is just one of the ways that we do that. So let's jump in. Hey, well, welcome, Zach. We're so glad that you're joining us today.
Holly, thank you so much for inviting me on the show. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to introduce you to our audience and just tell them a little bit about you. Zach Rausch is an associate research scientist at NYU, and he was a lead researcher for social psychologist Jonathan Haidt. So you're not only a researcher, but you're actually putting all these learnings into action. I would even say you're part of a movement that's beginning to kind of get this information out there. You've testified, you've been an expert witness in some state legislatures trying to get some change and bring awareness about social media in teens. And so you're doing some really great work, and we're just grateful that you're joining us today.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, so Anxious Generation, that was quite the read. I think every parent, every coach, every educator needs to read that book. And the subtitle, the title of the book will really just kind of jar you. The title is The Anxious Generation, subtitle, How the Great Rewiring of Childhood is Causing an Epidemic of Mental Illness. Okay, that is a hefty subtitle there. And you unearth these 2 plot lines, and they create this distinction of childhood, kind of 2 new terms for us. So will you tell us about the 2 categories of childhood that emerged through your research?
The big picture of the anxious generation and the way that we think about it is it's like a tragedy that happened in 2 parts. The first part began, in the 1960s, but it really accelerated in the 1990s. And this was what we call the loss of the play-based childhood. A play-based childhood, if you were born before the 1980s or so, if you think back to when you were a kid, you're out running around and probably your parents are not around with you. And most of those memories are some of the best that we hold. And it's so crucial because all mammals, as children, what we need is an enormous amount of independence, an enormous amount of play, because that is what teaches us to wire up our brains, to interact with others, to engage in the world, to deal with conflict, and to learn how to self-govern. So during the 1990s, there was, for a lot of reasons, we began to clamp down on the ability of kids to have that kind of childhood. We started sending them to more structured, supervised activities. We became more fearful of other adults, and kids stayed inside. And while this was happening, there was this other world that was kind of starting to grow. It was very exciting and new, and it was this new digital virtual world. And for most of us who, maybe if you're a millennial, it's the early internet. And that was a very exciting time. And, that was a period where we were extremely optimistic about technology. And then things started to change really rapidly. And this is the period where we believe the play-based childhood really came to a definitive end. And that was right around 2010. What happened at that point is where we transitioned from the play-based childhood into a phone-based childhood. This is the period between 2010 and 2015 when kids migrate their social lives almost entirely onto smartphones filled with social media apps and platforms, which is now infusing their entire lives, spending average 5 hours a day just on social media, 8-9 hours a day on screens. You don't have time for anything else. And so we have really, when the rewiring in the subtitle of the book is much more about the rewiring of childhood itself, not even about the brain. It's about the way that we interact with each other and how that changes the way that we experience the world, the way we grow up, and ultimately how it impacts our mental health.
Wow, that is a significant shift that we probably, until now, until your research, didn't even realize was happening right under our own noses. Now, we know that our kids have a phone-based childhood because that's all they talk about. That's all they want to do. We live in the reality of them wanting to be on their phones. But your research, you have some charts and some data that shows exactly what it's doing to kids and teens. Will you share some of those trends that you're finding about the mental health because of phone-based life?
So the period of 2010 to 2015 is what we call the great rewiring of childhood. That's the period where we go through that transition from play to phone-based childhood. It happened very quickly. And this is when we start to see real changes in mental health statistics among adolescents. And what's really striking, it's not just adolescents here in the United States, but it's adolescents in many countries around the world. And to give just a couple of stats to get a sense for it is between 2010 and 2019, you have more than a doubling of rates of major depression among adolescent girls in America. By 2021, just about 1 in 3 teen girls are reporting having a major depressive episode just in the last year alone. And so what happened, part of it could be changing norms around how people feel, their willingness to talk about mental health issues. But we're talking about 32% of adolescents who are reporting in the last year they had weeks of periods of highly significant states of sadness, loneliness, depression. And this is becoming a normal part of American childhood. So we have these rates of depression. We have similar triplings of going to the emergency room for self-harm episodes. This is among preteen girls, 10 to 14. So these are very concerning statistics, and we see similar things happening in different countries. So UK, Australia, New Zealand, all the Nordic countries, a lot of Western Europe are showing very similar trends. And again, what we point to is this dual story, that this two-part tragedy of overprotection in the real world and underprotection online. And both of them combined together sets kids up in a way that many of them are set out ultimately to fail. And what we're trying to do is to reverse those trends, because there's a lot that all of us can do.
Okay, wow. There's so much in that. So our teenage girls are becoming more and more anxious. And we probably notice this as parents and educators and leaders of them. They use that word more often. They identify with that state. Are you seeing any nuances or differences by age group of how anxiety is playing out?
Yeah. So the key thing here is that something really changed again around 2012, 2010 to 2015.
Okay.
And why that's important is, well, for many reasons, but one is that what we're doing is we're marking a generational difference. So the book is primarily about Generation Z. So it's the kids who are born after 1995. Those kids were in their early adolescence during that period, 2010 to 2015. And what distinguishes Gen Z from previous generations is that they were the first generation to grow up with a portal to the internet and a portal to social media in their pockets during puberty. This is really the key thing for us, is that puberty and early adolescence has always been for many people, a terrible time. And so, and our recollections of that period can often be bad, but it is the layering of the new virtual world on top of an already difficult period of life, which is why we believe that Gen Z in particular is so different than previous generations. The millennials, they also had social media. That was me. So I was born in 1994. I'm kind of like on that cutoff period.
Yeah.
But I didn't get really a smartphone until I think I was in 10th grade, and then Instagram didn't come out till I was almost graduated. So there was a period I had already developed through for the most part.
Those years. Yeah. So that's so interesting. So it's the combination of that really vulnerable time in life of adolescence, and then you put social media on top of it, and it's almost more than they can handle. It's kind of what I hear you saying.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay. You mentioned 2010, 2015. I'm guessing that is the advent of Instagram. Is that what happened in that? Like, what was the trigger that made that era so significant?
So in 2010, if you were a teenager, you probably had a flip phone. You didn't have unlimited data plans. You didn't have an Instagram account. You didn't have a front-facing camera. And you're texting with your friends to meet up, generally in person. By 2015, you have a smartphone, you have an Instagram account, you have a front-facing camera, unlimited data plans, and you're not texting each other to meet up in person. You're staying online, often in your bedroom, with your friends. This is the change in the dynamic of relationships that happens. It's a series of changes to social media, to smartphones, the interaction with that it happened together. And by 2015, you have a completely different way of that kids are interacting with each other.
Wow. So enter the phones, enter the social media, kind of exit the interpersonal touch points, which brings loneliness and sadness and depression. So I want to bring up, I want to circle back to something you said a couple times that I think is really significant for us as parents or educators, coaches. You basically talked about two mistakes that parents are making. Now, I grew up in the 80s. So that was the milk carton generation. Yeah. You remember when they started putting children that were unsafe or missing on milk cartons? And so almost began the anxious pattern perhaps for parents. But you talk about these two big mistakes of overprotecting kids in the real world and then under protecting them online. So can you unpack that a little bit more and then tell us what to do to counteract it?
Yeah. The first thing to say is that this is no individual parent's fault. What's happening here, both on the overprotection side and the underprotection side, is that everybody is stuck in a trap. And we call this a collective action problem. And why do I say that? It's a collective action problem because on the phone side, if you're a parent today and you have a 12-year-old who is coming to you begging for a phone, they're doing it because all of their friends have it. And every kid is doing the same thing. And being the parent saying, no, you can't do that, it's really, really difficult. And you are making a choice that's very costly, which is that you might socially isolate them from their friends. Now, if you are also a parent who wants to say, hey, go out and go play out in the streets, who's going to be there? Nobody. Everybody's at home.
So
and
true.
So we're trapped in this cycle that we keep getting kids devices at younger and younger ages because everybody else is doing it. And we don't send the kids out because nobody else is doing it. And so this is more of a group dynamic process. And that's why everything that we recommend in the book is about how do we reverse those collective decisions where we have to act together. And then actually it's very easy to get out, because what happens if a group of parents come together and say, let's delay smartphones until kids get to high school. We do it with a friend group, and that allows all of these kids to now have 5-6 hours now free from having to be on their devices. And Parents can choose this group together. Let these kids play together, unsupervised, out in the world. And this is really, it's very simple, the solution that we're calling for, which is we need to reverse both trends, and it has to both be done together as a group.
Wow, there's so much power in a like-minded community, and which is why I'm so grateful of you bringing us this new information so we can kind of see what we're dealing with and even how to chart a new path forward. So you talk about 4 different distinct things that you would recommend that would help sort of the group. If we would all adopt these, we could make some changes. Will you talk about these 4 things, your 4 suggestions?
Yes. So there are 4 big norms that are trying to address the collective action problem that I was just talking about. And I mentioned one of them. The first is we need to delay. So delaying smartphones until high school. Let's get smartphones out of middle school, out of early puberty, out of the most vulnerable period of our development. Number 2 is no social media until 16. This one is harder because you're in high school, kids are searching for more independence, but it is certainly possible. This is a big one that we're really working towards having tech companies and governments really step up. This is where we need their help. The third, though, is something that has been really explosive over the past couple of months, which is phone-free schools. From bell to bell, you have 7 hours of the day that you can give childhood back to kids. And so you have the full school day where the kids go in, put their phone in a pouch or into a locker, and they get it back at the end of the day. And number 4 is the play side. Much more independence, free play, responsibility in the real world. And if we can do those 4 things, we think that we can make a very significant dent in the well-being of our children.
That's so great. It's such a worthwhile vision when you say, give our childhood back to our children. You know, you get one childhood. And if we could even look at these devices and this sort of overstimulation as robbing them of something, you know, how much more could we offer them if we could give them back the fun and of play?
Yeah. And one thing that we like to say is to think about, if you were to think back to your childhood and think about all the time that you spent with your friends, now remove 60% of that. Think about all the time that you spent in the sunlight, and let's remove 60% of that. All of the time running around, making mistakes, falling down, removing 60% of that. What the amount of that you have left, that is what our kids are getting, and they deserve better. And their childhood has been in many ways taken by companies who are trying to extract their attention for longer and longer periods of time without clear signs that this is, 1, what they want, and 2, that this is benefiting them in the long run.
Wow, that's so good. I'm sending my son out to the yard this afternoon after this talk. No, those are great handles. Okay, there's a quote in the book. It's so profound. I'm just going to read it to you. And then I want to ask you a question. Okay, it says, social media platforms are therefore the most efficient conformity engines ever invented. They can shape an adolescent's mental models of acceptable behavior in a matter of hours, whereas parents can struggle unsuccessfully for years to get their children to sit up straight or stop whining. Parents don't get to use the power of conformity bias, so they are often no match for the socializing power of social media. Wow. I mean, we know it's a big deal, who our kids hang out with, what they're looking at, but the speed, I think, is what really got me in that. It's staggering how quickly it can rewire the brain, I guess, to your subtitle.
So the thing that we were really getting at in that quote is, you know, if you open up TikTok and you start swiping, it gets to know you extremely quickly. And there's something in psychology called intermittent variable reinforcement. And the idea here is that, you know, if you're at a casino and you're playing a slot machine, every once in a while you might hit something good, but most of the time you don't. But it's the possibility that something good might happen that keeps you going over and over again. And designers of social media platforms know this, and they've designed their products in a way that use this kind of learning strategy and mechanism where you are regularly, you know, you're liking, you're tapping, you're swiping, and through that, you start to develop, they start to develop an understanding of who you are, what you like. And in some ways, there's a back and forth reinforcement there where you end up kind of being trained by these platforms. So that's kind of part of what what we're talking about there.
That's crazy. I love the imagery. Social media is risky as a slot machine. Okay, that's the imagery I'm going to have in my mind, because it's just keeping that hope that something good's going to happen. Wow. Okay, so one of your recommendations that you've really been creating awareness for is this phone-free school. And so congratulations, because you're making some headway there, which is pretty
Yes.
amazing. Lots of school districts have passed regulations to go phone-free, which is amazing. And earlier you talked about parents having agency in this conversation, that
Yes.
parents have some power in this conversation too. So what would be your recommendation for parents to contribute to the phone-free learning zone?
That's a great question. You know, there are a bunch of organizations that are doing really great work on this, and that parents can get involved in. There's the Phone-Free Schools movement. You can find all of resources to get more involved by reading our Substack at afterbabble.com, and then also on our website at anxiousgeneration.com. And we're kind of associated with about 50 different organizations internationally, a lot in the US that are doing this kind of work. But one of the biggest things that you can do just, right off the bat is, sign up, get a petition together with the other kids in the other parents in your kid's grade, to call for your principal or your superintendent to make your school phone free from bell to bell. One of the biggest concerns that principals and school teachers have, or more administrators, is potential parent pushback. There's a concern and a fear that parents are not going to be okay with schools going phone free because we want to be in touch with our kids all the time.
Okay.
And the thing is that we just need, again, to think back to our own childhood and what it would be like if our parents could be in our pocket 24/7 and how we would feel about that. It's so important to develop that independence again. And one of the best things and easiest ways that we can do that is in school. We can learn to create that separation and that boundary. And so it's for the benefit of not only kids, but also for parents. And I believe for also the parent-child relationship by having schools go phone free, because kids can learn to deal with stuff on their own without being tied to their devices in their pockets. And parents can also breathe a sigh of relief that we don't always need to be in touch. It's going to be okay. And that's a really hard thing for anybody to learn in any relationship, a romantic relationship, friendships, learning to be okay while being separated. And I believe that parents can really lead the way on the phone-free schools, because it's both going to be a benefit to the kid, but also to yourself.
That's such a good mentality, because we really have the power to give them their autonomy back so that they can gain confidence and be well and have a childhood. Okay, that's big. So one last question before we wrap up our conversation. In the book, Jonathan talks about some benefits of spiritual practices and community, and you've touched on a community a little bit today. So we are a church, and so of course we have a high value on small groups. That's what we do. We gather our students together every week. They go to a large group where they hear a message, and then they go to a smaller group where they discuss it so that they can process. So tell me, what benefits do you see for this generation around that type of connection?
Oh, well, this is like my favorite topic.
I love it.
One of the most extraordinary findings that I've seen in the data on mental health is that there is a big difference between teens with a religious background and teens who do not. And what we find is that it's actually specifically if your background is you're more religious and conservative, it's kind of the combination of the two that we don't actually see as big of a mental health spike during the period of the 2010s. And what I believe is behind this, and a lot of my writing, is around just the importance of local, in-person, tight communities. One of the things that religious traditions really understood extremely well is the power of having ritual and norms and rites and rules that we follow throughout the day. And one of the things that happened in the 2010s is the absolute and complete infusion of technology in all parts of our lives, from when we wake up to when we go to bed. And one of the things that I believe religious communities can do and are like set up to really lead as moral leaders is that we can set boundaries around technology and also set rules around engagement with other people. And so I think that churches, synagogues, mosques, just generally have an enormous opportunity these days to be the leaders of what can a 21st century childhood with technology really look like.
Wow, that's an exciting thought to lead out on setting the boundaries and creating community.
Yeah.
I love that. Thank you for that. Thank you so much for your time today. Thank you and Jonathan for your hard work on this, bringing it to our attention. And every parent should grab The Anxious Generation and get a copy, give it a read, and start doing some of these things. Zach, so grateful to learn from you today. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Holly.
We've got more practical advice coming your way. Stay tuned for my conversation with author and counselor Sissy Goff. Hey, Sissy, how are you?
I'm good, Holly. It's so good to see you.
It's so good to see you, too. I feel like you're part of the North Point family. I mean,
Well,
you just feel like a regular around here.
That's a huge honor to me. I wish I lived closer and could be there more often.
I do too. Well, we've had so much fun partnering with you. We've partnered, we've made content, we've made different resources for small group leaders and parents, and just like we're going to do today. So we will take any chance we can to work with you. So thanks so much for being here.
Of course.
Well, you're a familiar voice to us, to many people watching from North Point, but for people that are tuning in for the first time, I'd love to share a little bit about you. Sissy is the executive director at Daystar Counseling in Nashville, Tennessee. And for 30 years, she's been helping girls and their parents find confidence in who they are and hope in who God made them to be, which I love that mission statement. So good, especially as a mom of 2 daughters. Sissy's a sought-after speaker. She's the co-host of Raising Boys and Girls podcast and the author of 13 books, including her latest, which is called The Worry-Free Parent, Finding the Confidence You Need So Your Kids Can Too. Sissy, what a resume. Thank you for being here with us today.
Well, thank you for having me.
Okay, you ready to jump in?
I'm ready.
All right, let's do it. So you've counseled lots of parents, lots of kids. You've written several books. Talk to us about what you're seeing today with anxiety in kids.
A lot. I'm seeing a lot of anxiety. And I, as you said, I've been doing this work for 30 years. And in the last, really even before the pandemic, the numbers were going up. But now we're looking at 1 in 4 kids, 1 in 3 adolescents are dealing with anxiety. Girls are twice as likely as boys to struggle with it, but boys are taken in for help more, which is really fascinating. And for grown-ups, 1 in 3 of us and women are twice as likely to deal with it as men. So it's pretty rampant.
So this is real. This is real. It's in our
real.
face. And,
Yes.
and for women and girls especially.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. You have a great definition of anxiety. I actually think about this a lot when I'm feeling anxious. I think of your definition just to help, calm me down. So for those of us that are parents, coaches, educators, will you give us the Sissy definition of anxiety?
Yes. Well, because I've written 4 books on anxiety at this point, I've done a lot of research. And in the research, kind of where I landed was that worry is an overestimation of the problem and an underestimation of ourselves or themselves when it comes to kids. Like, it's too big, it's too hard, I can't do it, I'm not enough. And I see so many kids facing that on a daily basis.
Wow, those are such helpful handles. Just to realize, hey, something in our mind that somewhat we're creating.
Yes,
Wow.
that is a great word, Holly. Yes. It's not
Your
real.
book, yeah, that's helpful to remember. Helpful. Your book, The Worry-Free Parent. Okay, you have these 3 short statements that talk about anxiety. They say, anxiety left untreated, it only gets worse. Worry plays tricks, and worry needs truth. Okay, so we're living in this anxious age, and then we have technology which just compounds everything. So, talk to us a
Right.
little bit about the connection between anxiety and technology for our kids.
Well, I talked to a psychologist years ago who helped me understand it in a different way. And what she said was that when we're looking at a screen, for any of us, but kids certainly whose brains haven't developed the ability to calm themselves
Hmm.
down yet, we're being bombarded by energy, by images and stimulation. And our brains often that moves them into an anxious state. It mimics anxiety. And so, again, for kids whose brains
Wow.
haven't learned to regulate themselves yet, they stay in this hyper aroused state when they're looking at a screen. And so, even just that, even the fast paced movement and images that are coming across are going to make brains move toward that anxiety. And we know brains have a use it or lose it phenomenon that happens that's called
Hmm.
pruning. And so whatever we're doing more is going to be they're going to become these well entrenched paths in our brain, these neural pathways. And so kids are losing the ability to not only do things like go out and play sports and interact socially, but self-regulation is a really important neural pathway that we want kids to learn. And so when they're in this aroused, hyper anxious state a lot, they're not developing that neural pathway. So from a scientific standpoint, even, it really is changing kids' brains. It's changing our brains too.
Wow. Okay, that's fascinating. That's really big. Whatever we feed our brain, it projects the pathway.
Yes, exactly. It becomes a
Wow.
well-worn pathway in our brain. Yes.
Okay, so we're feeding ourselves as kids and as adolescents these really hyperactive, sort of fast paced messages. All right, so
Yes.
talk about when you're sitting with kids, when you're sitting with teens, talk about what you're hearing that social media, what is that doing to them in those adolescent years?
Oh, so many things. I mean, comparison would obviously be one that we
Mm,
know that we're watching the highlight reel. They don't understand that they're watching the highlight reel. And it starts as young as they get on social media. I mean, as soon as that starts, they see it. But also, there is this pressure to keep up, this pressure to not only present that, but to live that. And so I can't be honest about myself. I can't be honest with myself about what I'm feeling, about where I am. And I've got to look great all the time. I've got to be really on. It's just this, they're
a lot
presenting
of
this side of
pressure.
themselves that isn't true, the pressure.
Wow.
And things like, I mean, Snapchat streaks, for example, just the back and forth of relationship that they feel like they have to maintain. And I think that's so much of it for girls too. There's this, I think girls are hardwired to connect from how God made our brains as women. And so that pressure to stay connected and say the right thing and never say the
Mm,
wrong thing and never offend anyone else. And I don't even know how to, I think kids are losing the ability to gradually move into relationship and to slowly build. And they think, I heard a speaker one time talk about how girls place best friend expectations on acquaintances. And
oh,
I think,
wow.
isn't that interesting? And I think social
Yeah.
media is making that even worse because we don't have acquaintances. We don't understand what it looks like to slowly build relationships and intimacy. And so there's just so much that's being lost when we're staring into a screen that I think is really significant. And so I just am watching a lot of girls feel like I don't have any friends. A lot of kids feel like
Hmm.
I don't know what to say when I'm sitting next to
Yeah.
somebody else in real time. And I'm not even sitting next to them in real time. I'm going over to a friend's house and everyone's staring at their screens the whole time. And so there's just a lot that's being lost socially and
Yeah.
emotionally for kids.
That's so interesting that you say that because that is the conversation in our house is my children who are in adolescence wanting these social media things. And they say, I can't walk into a room and not have that because they need it
Mm,
as a social buffer.
yes,
So they can be
exactly.
standing next to somebody, but they need to be snapping the person they sound next to standing next to.
Isn't that wild?
So it's distorting our self-image or kids'
Hmm.
self-image and it's distorting their
Yes,
interpersonal skills.
yes. That's a
Wow.
great way to say that. And building more anxiety.
And
along the way,
building more anxiety along the way.
and contributing to depression. I mean, there are so many things we could say about it that are really
Wow.
significant.
Okay, I know you're familiar. We just talked about before the audience jumped on that you're also reading this book called The Anxious Generation.
Yes.
New book. Jonathan Haidt has done some great research and just some staggering things, paradigm shifts that we're seeing. And you're already seeing these in your office. So he gives 2 suggestions about what do we do? We know this stuff is causing all the things we just talked about, low self-esteem and depression, anxiety. He recommends delay smartphones until high school and delay social media until age 16. What do you think of those recommendations, and what other guidance do you have for us parents?
I love those recommendations. I have been so thrilled about his work. And even, I mean, we both know, but the news that's coming in about schools, how schools
Yeah.
are starting to ban phones. I'm so thankful because I talk to kids who are on their phones all day long during the school day. And so I am thrilled. And I think I jokingly will say to parents a lot that basically you don't want to be the first to let your kids have every technological advancement, because those kids are often going to be perceived as cutting edge or fast. We might have said when we were growing up, not that that's a word anymore, but that's
Yes,
that's
exactly.
the thing.
Yes.
Or if we let our kids be the last to use every technological advancement, I think in some ways we are not teaching them how to become responsible users of technology. And in all things, I think with kids, we want to be doing that. We want to be widening the parameters. And so basically, they're going to mess up when it comes to technology. Kids just are in this day and time. Just like we were going to mess up when it came to curfews. You know, they want to take healthy, age-appropriate risks. And some of that may be being on the screen too long or saying something maybe they shouldn't. But we would so much rather them make the mistake while they're under our roof, and we can help them work through it. We can talk it through with them. And so my rule of thumb is you don't want to be the first, you don't want to be the last, and so be the next to last, which I think
love
is
it.
exactly what Jonathan Haidt's saying. I mean, I think
Yeah.
if we were to delay smartphones till high school, social media till 16, we'd probably be among the next to last. But so much of his research talks about the significant brain jumps, the growth that is taking place pre-16, which is often when kids are getting on social media. And so I love the idea of holding off as long as you can, but still letting them have those opportunities when we can work it through with them and talk it through with them. Because in all things, the best preventative tool, the most helpful tool that kids ever have aren't just things that are blocking their devices, but it's conversation with us. It's our
so
involvement
good.
with them along the way.
Well, that's so helpful because that adds a healthy dose of realism, because we can read some of these things and think, oh my gosh, I don't know if I could do this. And do I want to be the
Right.
last one? But I love the be the next to last, prolong it as long as you can.
Yes.
And even the thought that, hey, while they're under our roof, we want to let the rope out a little bit so
Right.
we can help guide them. So
Yes.
can I go there? Can we go to
Yeah, sure.
what does it
Absolutely.
look like to start letting the rope out a little bit? Because, if you're a parent, I'm sure so many parents just like me, every day it's wanting more freedom, wanting more access. There's always a friend that has more than them. And the no is hard because they can hear, wait a minute, do you think I'm not a good kid? Or they don't really, there's a disconnect of the heart behind where we're coming
Yes.
from.
Yes.
So help us. How do we have these conversations? Can you give us a script? Can you give us some words to say in this conversation as parents?
Well, I mean, a couple of things I would want you to have internally as a reminder that aren't as much a script, except for you to have in your head. Number one is, I think in technology, more than anything else, you're going to have to be the bad guy along the way. I think in this day and time. And so remind yourself that kids need boundaries, that boundaries create security for kids. And
That's good.
if I have seen plenty of kids over the years who have had no boundaries around technology, and you would not believe how young kids find their way to pornography. if we don't have the boundaries. I mean, I will say to parents, I think it's the equivalent of us letting them walk into an adult bookstore if we have zero guardrails, which no parent would ever do in their right mind. But I remember a mom years ago who said to me, she had just lost her husband, and she said, I just haven't been on top of it, which of course she wasn't on top of it because of what she was going through. And at the same time, her daughter had found her way to some really inappropriate websites. And so, you know, I think just be willing to be the bad guy and know it is for protection's sake. And I don't believe when we say no to kids, even when we're speaking to their heart, there is ever a reason that they're going to say, oh, Mom, Dad, thank you. Thank you for watching out for me. Thank you for protecting me. I get it. Okay, never mind. I mean, they're just not, because to them, survival means keeping up. Survival means being in the in crowd in so many ways. And keeping up today has everything to do with, I mean, younger, it's not even the social media platform, but it's, are they getting to watch whatever show all the kids are watching right now? I mean, my 5-year-old nephew talks about Minecraft all the time. He plays Minecraft games on the kindergarten playground. He's no more allowed to do anything Minecraft related, but that's the language that the kids are speaking. And so it starts so early. And so I think be willing to be the bad guy, and remember they're going to do everything they can to manipulate you and talk you into it. And it's going to make you feel guilty. And, you know, I have never met a parent who doesn't not only want to be a really good parent, but want to be liked by their kids. And so it's going to push your buttons when this is happening, and just hang in there. And remember, you are keeping them out of an adult bookstore. You are keeping them from running across the street in traffic. And so it's going to be a hard no, hard, painful no for you. So that's not really a script.
Helpful. Well, it's so helpful. You know, it's like we would protect them in real life, and this is what it would look like to protect them. And it's helpful to hear that their motivation is their brain's telling them, I'm trying to survive, I'm trying to fit in, which is super normal for their age.
Of course.
And at that point, you need a guide. So that's so helpful. Thank you for that.
Well, and I mean, the one additional script I would say is I think we can have a lot of empathy with it. Buddy, I know that is so hard that you want to play this game that everybody around you is talking about. And there will be a day you get to play it. But I love you, and my job is to protect you.
So good.
You know,
I
don't think we have to say a lot. I don't think we have to over-explain, because, again, there's not an explanation that's really going to set them free to be okay with us in that moment.
No, makes sense. Okay, what do you say to the parent who says, okay, I'm just learning this now, and I've already done these things. I feel like the cat's out of the bag, and they're wondering, how do you rein it in, or do they rein it in? What kind of advice would you give them?
Well, I think if they're 17, if your kids are 17, I would probably have a conversation with them about it and sit down and say, I saw this podcast with these two women, and I heard them talk about the dangers that this is creating right now. And so I want you to tell me, what do you think it's like? I'm not going to take everything away from you, but I want you to tell me where you see it hurt you, how you feel like it affects you emotionally, how you feel like it affects you socially, and can I support you in putting any limits around what would really help, where we're letting them be in the driver's seat if they're older, but also having the conversation. I also would highly recommend with kids who are high school and above watching the movie The Social Dilemma.
Yes.
Because I think for them to understand what is at heart behind the developers and what really it's doing, I don't know that they would ever read The Anxious Generation. I wish they would. But they could listen to a podcast with him. But I think for them to have a different voice that is speaking to some of the realities of it would be really helpful. Now, if they're in middle school, I don't think it's too late to say, you know what? I did not know. We are just learning the effects of technology on the brain. And you're at an age that it is really impacting your brain. And so you are going to be mad at me, and that's okay with me, because my job is to protect you as a parent. So we're gonna meet in the middle, and we're gonna make some changes, and you can have the conversation with me about what changes we're gonna make, but we've got to do something different as for me to protect you, which is my job as a parent. And I'm gonna do some things differently too. I think
Well,
we
I
need to be
love that. I
modeling it
love
as
it.
well.
It models that's how life is. You get new
Yeah,
information and you course correct. And there's
right.
something so empowering about that's a great suggestion about introducing them to some of the information because it empowers them to kind of know what they're dealing with. That's so good.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, so our generation of kids, they call them digital natives, which is not what we are. We did not grow up with any of
Oh,
this. So we really can't look to what our parents did in this realm because it doesn't exist. Um,
right.
and so you kind of actually already touched a little bit on this, but how do we teach them what responsible technology looks like? Like, how do they become owners of being responsible with this powerful thing they've been given?
I love that question. And I mean, I think anytime we include them in the conversation, we're empowering them, we're educating them, we're helping them understand that our relationship is always priority, which is what we want them to
Mm,
know. Even though we're putting protective guardrails up, our relationship is always priority. And so I think I think it could be great to have technology check ins regularly
mm,
as a family and to say, hey, let's talk about how do you feel like technology is impacting you. Let's talk about the rules we have around technology right now. How do you feel about them? Are there rules that are hard for you right now? Do you feel like you need more guidelines around technology? I'm going to talk about how it's hard for me right now because
yeah.
we need to keep checking in about it. I think having conversations like that. And I love the folks at RO. I think what they have developed is a wonderful resource. I don't know if you're familiar with it,
I'm
but
not.
these
No.
okay, you need to get to know them. They're wonderful. Um, it's called goronow.com, I think is their website. I want to double check that before we get off the call. But it is they have created this box that is really pretty. It looks like a white linen box with a bamboo cover and it is basically a place where everybody in the family plugs in their phones and they have rather than saying you've been on your phone too long, it's more of a positive spin. Like you had your phone plugged into the box for an hour today. Way to go. And they've even gamified where there are kind of rewards along the way. But you can create family challenges, doing things like that incentivize being away from the phones. Because the premise behind this is if we change our relationship with our phones, we change our relationship with each other, which is a
Wow, that's
beautiful
major.
concept. Yes.
Wow.
And so, again, I think anytime we can bring in another party, another voice that
Mhm.
we're kind of all learning from it together, I think kids feel more like we're on their team rather than we're just the one saying, "Stop, turn in your phone." And I think to that end, whether it's RO, whether it's Circle, whether it's Teen Safe, whatever, Bark, whatever you're using that helps you where you're not having to say, give me your phone, you've been on it too long, where we're in this constant power struggle with them. I think something else that shuts them down, that gives them the guardrails and the time limits is
Yeah,
really helpful.
that's a great suggestion. So glad that I learned about that today. Wow.
It's awesome.
Okay, we talked earlier about how some changes are happening in some school districts, not everywhere, but we know this is something
Right.
real that educators have to deal with. This new
Yes.
phones on kids all the time. So, what specific advice would you give to educators in this realm?
Well, I think one thing I would say is you're early enough in the school year to set a lot of good parameters. And
Mm,
I will speak from the perspective of a camp. So we have a little summer camp for the kids who are in counseling at Daystar called Hopetown, and I'm the director of the camp and we have a rule that they can't have phones. And it's interesting because it is right now as hard on parents as it is on kids.
oh,
And
wow.
and we have had kids who sneak their phones and their parents know because they're texting their parents.
Okay.
And so I think if I were, and we have pretty strong language in our paperwork for Hopetown about not only this is why kids can't have their phones, but by the way, if you see photos posted of your child and they are not sitting next to someone, it's not necessarily that they're being left out in that moment. It may be we've just caught them in a moment that they're reading or thinking about something else. And so don't let one photo determine how you
Mm-hmm.
feel like your child is doing at camp. So I feel like I think if I were an educator right now, I would be working with the kids, but I would also be working with the parents. And I would, even if your school has not instituted a phone-free school, I would institute a phone-free classroom and say, hey,
Yeah.
we're going to keep these off. And here's what happens if you don't keep yours off. I'm going to really enjoy having some extra phones for the school day, or the hour or whatever it is. And then I would send a note home to parents to say, this is what I'm doing. Even to say, I've been learning a lot about technology and have read. I would highly recommend reading The Anxious Generation
Yeah.
and maybe The Worry-Free Parent too right now. And these are the parameters we're going to have in our classroom, and we all want to be on the same team. I think anytime as someone who works with parents, someone who works with kids, I think anytime we can use language that makes it feel like we're on the same team, I think we're going to.
That's so good.
And we're assuming the best about parents. So I know we're all for kids' mental health. We're all for kids to stop experiencing so many of the effects of screens. So here's what we're going to do together, parents. And so that way it's just we're all on the same team.
It really is. It's an all-in sport. Everybody's got to play, and
Holly,
what you
that's awesome.
experienced.
Yes.
Well, what you experienced about parents is really fascinating, which probably led you to write the book, The Worry-Free Parent, for a reason, because, right, there's a reason the parents are having anxiety because they can't reach their children. So talk to us parents, because we also need some guidance in this whole area too. What are some things that we could be doing that would be helpful for our kids?
Well, yes, I have encountered more anxious parents in the last 3 years than I ever have in 30. And I had a really amazing conversation with this couple. I've been working with this couple for years, and they basically both came from really unhealthy families and want to do something different. And so I love that they come in every 6 months to say, hey, almost like a well visit at the pediatrician, like, here's where we are. What do we need to be doing differently?
Wow.
Here's where our daughter is. And they're so thoughtful. And this dad, they walked in one week, and he's the CEO of his company. And he said, says, I was at a training recently. And one of the things the speaker said was that a CEO's job is to be the calmest person in the room. And he said, I immediately thought about our home. And I thought, I think a parent's job is to be the calmest person in the room. And he said, I'm blowing it all the time, and I've got to do something different. Can you help? And I love the intentionality of that. I would say parents are more anxious than I've ever seen, but I'd also say they're more intentional than I've ever seen. And I think that's part of the problem, even is we all have so many voices that are speaking into everything we do, and we're wanting so much to get it right. And so it feels really overwhelming. So, okay, I'm saying a lot. 5 things. I would say 5 things to anxious parents.
Okay.
One is based on exactly what we're talking about of being the calmest person in the room. Number 1 is we've got to do our own work. I think that is the single best thing we can do for kids is to do our own work. And as we're talking about the anxious generation, one of the things that I think has been fascinating about watching people consume this book is it talks about 2 primary things. One is technology, and the other is coddling. That we are not letting kids take healthy, age-appropriate risks. And the media
and is that because of our anxiety that we won't let? Okay.
Yes.
So that's the root of it.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think it's fascinating that out of the 2 concepts of that book, the one we're talking about the most is technology. And we're not talking about kids taking risk.
Yeah.
Isn't that interesting?
Yes.
And so I think that has to do with us doing our own work, number 1, I would say.
Good.
Because the 2 most common parenting strategies in light of anxiety are escape and avoidance. And so if I'm stepping in out of my own anxiety and keeping them from doing things, I'm doing the opposite of the definition we talked about before. Anxiety is an overestimation of the problem and an underestimation of themselves. If I'm rescuing, I'm saying, you're right, it is too much. You can't do it. Wow. Never what I would want to be communicating, but that's what I'm doing.
And that really affects their self-esteem.
Yes.
Right,
exactly,
because aren't they
Holly.
picking up that message? Yeah.
Yes, without us meaning for them to.
Yeah.
So that's number 1. Number 2, let your kids grow and go, which is exactly what we're talking about. How can your kids take healthy, age-appropriate risks? And I would say if you're listening, I want you to think about 2 things you're doing for your kids right now that they can do for themselves.
That's good.
and 2 things you're doing for your kids that they can almost do for themselves. And I want you to stop doing all 4.
Okay. That's a good challenge.
So
Yeah.
don't throw anything at the speaker that you're listening to right now. But I think that's part
Yeah.
of it, because
It's a
when
good
kids
challenge. I
can
like
do
it.
things,
Yeah.
when kids can take risks, they're going to feel, as you said, more confidence. Okay, number 3,
Yeah.
have warmth. In the research, one of the things that I read was that anxiety in kids is often linked to a lack of parental warmth, which I think is
Wow.
really interesting and tragic at the
Huh.
same time. And I have experienced it to be true, because I think when we get really anxious, and I'm going to say I'm certainly a part of this, when I get really anxious, I get so intense.
Yeah.
And it's not that I'm warm. I think I'm a pretty warm person if you were just to meet me. But when I'm in that intense, anxious place, I can't access the warmth. And warmth helps kids self-regulate. It helps them know we believe in them. It helps them feel safe within the context of our relationship. And so we've got to do our own work to get back to a place of warmth. So have warmth. I'm giving all the hard information right
No,
now.
this is good. We need to hear it.
Well, the 4th would be offer empathy and questions. So like we talked about, I know that's really hard. I hear you how scary that is, because anxious kids, even though they need to do hard things, they're some of the most manipulative kids I ever encounter, because it feels like they can't do the scary thing in the moment. And so they're going to do everything they can to get us to rescue them, when in fact they need to do the hard thing. And so I love the idea of empathy and questions. That sounds so hard. What do you think would help? What do you want to do? Who do you believe God's called you to be in this moment? That we're asking questions, because questions, my little therapy dog is digging right now in a chair. I apologize, but she's my little counseling assistant. If you can hear her in the background, so sorry.
No, you're good.
So I think questions imply capability. Even if they don't know,
That's strong.
just the fact that I'm asking means I believe that you're
believe you're
capable of
capable.
figuring it out. Yeah.
That is so great.
Empathy and questions. And then the last idea would be something I say to parents a lot, which is let the bottom 20% go.
Ooh,
And
20%.
yeah, which is some of
Yeah.
that grow and go idea, because I think
Yeah.
when we are anxious people, and if you're a perfectionist and you're listening, one of the things that I think we do is we don't see detail. Everything has the same weight. So when people say choose your battles, I have no idea how to choose battles, because every battle feels worth fighting.
Wow.
And so
Okay.
to think about with kids, what are the things that you're battling? What are the things that you're hovering over, that you're having power struggles with them, the risks they want to take even? Think about the 80% that's most important, and what's the bottom 20% that matters the least? And how can you let it go and stop talking about it even, which is hard.
So good. Well, I see why you say that we have our own work to do,
Yes.
because those things take practice. And it's hard to do these things in our strength, which brings me to maybe one of my favorite
Amen.
points of our conversation today is there's a role of faith in all of this. And as church, this is what we do every week. We try to create environments where kids can feel safe, where they can develop a faith of their own, and where they can start getting these skills and some confidence, because life is going to be hard, and we would love to send them into adulthood feeling secure. So
Yes.
talk about the role that faith has to play with anxiety and worry.
I love even thinking about this, because it is so profound. I mean, I feel like we both know in our own daily life the role that faith plays. And again, our little summer camp for kids in counseling at Daystar called Hopetown, Melissa Trevathan is our founding director, and she does all the teaching with the kids. And she said something that I loved once to a group of kids, and she said, courage isn't the antidote to anxiety, but trust is. And what I love about that is courage feels so dependent on us. It feels like something we have to gird ourselves and, rise to. Muster, that's a great word. And trust feels dependent on someone a whole lot stronger than any of us are. And the thing about trust is trust transforms us. And even as we're talking about well-worn pathways in the brain, neural pathways, when I do something, when I let myself go to that place of worry, as we talked about, I'm developing neural pathways that are related to worry. My brain, even what's happening is, and part of you saying anxiety plays tricks earlier, the more often I let myself go to a place of worry and that neural pathway gets strengthened, my amygdala, that's the part of my brain that dictates fight or flight, actually enlarges and it develops a hair trigger response. Whereas if instead, when I start to get anxious, I start to do something like I have breath prayers in the Worry-Free Parent, where basically I'm going over scripture and I breathe in and say to myself, I can do all things. And I breathe out through Christ who strengthens me. Or be still, breathing in, and know that I'm God, breathing out.
Yeah.
And as I'm breathing, as I'm anchoring myself to truth, I'm developing new neural pathways that move me towards truth and trust rather than worry. And so really from a scientific standpoint, even that kind of trust is going to transform us, which we know we're fearfully and wonderfully made, that God does all of those things on purpose. And so I want so much for us to teach kids. I mean, one of the first things I do is have them memorize some kind of truth, some kind of scripture that they can anchor themselves to and breathe through and remember when they get worried. And I think we've got to be doing the same.
That's so good. That thought, trust transforms.
Yes.
That is so powerful. So what do you say to the parent right now who's feeling a little way down? Maybe they don't have these practices in place yet. What would you say to encourage them?
Well, Richard Rohr said, which I love this, we grow more spiritually by getting it wrong than by getting it right. And I think that's so true.
Wow.
I mean,
Wow.
and kids learn more grace from us showing our own need for Jesus, not from how well we're doing as parents or as people. And even if I'm going to keep switching back and forth from psychology to faith because I think the two things mirror each other in ways that we don't often talk about. But attachment theory, which is so foundational to parenting, says that good parents get it right 50% of the time. So you don't have to do this perfectly. You can blow it a lot.
You're an imperfect person. Yeah.
Yes,
Wow.
absolutely.
There's some freedom in that.
There is so much freedom in that. And I think, again, I feel like that kids learn so much from our dependence on Him, from our dependence on God. And so when we can trust, when we can say, you know what, I have not been doing a lot of things right, but I trust that God is growing good things in me just like He's growing good things in you. And so we're going to do some things differently. And really, I mean, I joke a lot about this in parenting seminars, but one of the things that I've learned about anxiety is that kids who are anxious, parents who are anxious, are people who are trying really hard, who care so deeply, who want so much good for their kids. And so you're winning already. You're doing so many good and beautiful things already. And you are exactly the parent that God chose for each of your kids, even your hardest child. And so I think even going back to that idea of, I want you to trust that, to trust that God picked you. And I think that trust transforms us. And so even if you've blown a lot of the things along the way, 50% of the time.
Best thing, it sounds like the best thing we can do is role model grace for ourselves and for them. Wow.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you for that. Thank you. I know I need to hear that. I'm sure there are a lot of parents watching that just need that permission of, that's why we need a Savior. That's why we need grace. So cool. Sissy, you were amazing. Thank you so much for just being a voice of wisdom and guidance for us. We appreciate it as we raise our kids. We're so grateful to learn from you.
I'm so grateful for you guys and proud to be a part of the North Point family from afar.
Oh, well, you are, for sure. You are part of the family, and I think everybody watching should pick up a copy of your new book, The Worry-Free Parent. It sounds like there's so much wisdom in there. We could start our own small groups or do a book club, but we'd love to keep discussing that. So thank you so much for your time today and for being with us. And until next time, we'll see you again. As we wrap up our time together, I want to offer a final few thoughts. If you're an educator or a coach, we hope this content has been helpful for you. And I just want to say we are so grateful for the investment that you're making in the next generation. For parents that attend one of our churches, well, we consider it an amazing honor just to partner with you as you're raising your kids. Our goal is that we're creating environments every week where your kids can be known, where they can develop a faith of their own, and where they can build friendships. So if there's ever anything we can do for you, please don't hesitate to reach out. And then finally, if you're looking for a church to attend with your family, we'd love for you to join us on one Sunday. I'm here at North Point Community Church in Alpharetta, but we've got churches all over the metro Atlanta area, and we've got partner churches all over the country. So you can just click the link below and find a location near you. Thanks so much for joining us today. We will see you next time.